Hi, I'm Grace, and this is the Move to Cantabria podcast, where we celebrate life in Cantabria and give you the tools, support, and confidence to move and live here with ease. Each episode, I'll be joined by locals, expats, and experts who share their stories, insights, and tips to help you understand Cantabrian life, from culture and community to schools, housing, and everyday living. So, grab a coffee, settle in, and let's dive into today's conversation. Welcome to today's episode. We're joined by Naomi and Marta of Enboscados, and the reason that I have invited these two wonderful women here today is to talk about the role that nature plays with children, with families and with adults alike, and how we learn within the environment of nature. And of course, Cantabria is the perfect playground for that because of all the natural landscapes that we have here. So Naomi and Martha, welcome.
Hi, Grace.
Hi. You were one of the first people that I contacted when we moved here to Cantabria in 2020. And I distinctly remember sitting on my sofa in our house in Laredo and just, having come from Australia where bush school was so ingrained in, every toddler started in bush school, and there is such an Indigenous respect and integration, I think, with nature into families' lives there. I really wanted to find something similar in an apart from myself and my husband and Finn then going out, and doing it ourselves. But I wanted to find a community who, loved nature as much as we did. And so yeah, from 2025, and then Finn, my eldest, has been attending your after school program for the last number of years through his school. It's been a wonderful community for us to be able to tap into. So thank you very much, and tell us a little bit about what brought you into being a forest school teacher. And because you weren't always, you made that decision and adapted to lifestyle.
Okay, maybe I can go first and then I'll pass over to Marta. Well, it goes back almost to 2018, 2019 when Marta and I first met. We were both working as secondary teachers in different schools in the same area in the south of Cantabria. And we instantly clicked, I think, when we were talking about education, as also both being parents, that we felt there was definitely a need for a change in the education system, or at least some alternatives that could run in parallel to the education system that would offer children more than they're getting in terms of connection to nature and being able to develop different skills and qualities outdoors. So we started investigating together about how we as professionals could develop our skills first. And we trained as forest school leaders in the UK, and also in Spain. We did a course previously in Madrid. We're both now fully qualified level 3 forest school leaders, and we started Enboscados in 2019. And we've gradually come away from our conventional education jobs and now dedicate probably a good part of our time to Enboscados.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
and Naomi, you're not Spanish.
No, I'm not. I know I'm not. I'm English. I've been living in Spain, actually in Cantabria, for coming up to 25 years now.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah. So I definitely hooked. I got hooked onto Cantabria from the start. I mean, we can talk about it later, but the amazing landscape, it just, it's a huge attraction.
Yeah. And Martha?
Yeah, and as Naomi says, it was amazing to meet her because we felt like instantly very aligned about our vision of education that supports how nature supports learning. And we had like a similar situation in which both were teachers, but were not happy about how the conventional systems supported that. Yeah, in my case, I'm not from Cantabria, so that was another link. And I moved to Cantabria when I was 18. I grew up in the Pyrenees, so I've always felt like really keen on nature, mountains, outdoor sports, so that was important for me. It was my family that moved to Cantabria. It wasn't my decision in that But then I really decided to stay here after studying abroad and traveling. And that was an important part also of my background, because together with motherhood, I also realized that the needs of children were really freedom, nature, and meaningful relationships. And so I made a connection between nature and education. And I really felt that I had to make that change that Naomi was talking about. So we really met in the exact moment.
I love it. I love it. It's yeah, from a business perspective, it's just amazing when you find that partner, to do it together. It's yeah, no, it's wonderful. And you do work so well together and complement each other really well.
Hmm.
So something that you've just kind of hinted on there is how does the say the public education system, how much nature is in it, and then, or what is the difference between public school and forest school? In Cantabria, we don't have any outdoor schools as you might have in Northern Europe or even parts of the UK, and in Ireland. I know there's a couple of outdoor schools. I know there are in other parts of Spain, but in Cantabria, we don't have an outdoor specific school here. And no, it's not because the weather is so bad. But I guess briefly, but has the education system developed to be more academic focused and therefore lost some of the play and some of the nature in it?
It's a good question. I think there's many parts to this question. I think also one thing is it depends on the stage of the education system. I would say we're still here in Spain, I think, in the infant stage. So you're going from 3 to 5 year olds. There's probably more. It all comes down to time and space in the
Yeah.
curriculum. And I think in the early stages, there is more space for that. And you do find a lot of infant schools that have that space and time for more connection with nature, or at least incorporating an outdoor space into the school environment. Unfortunately, once the children start in primary and also moving up into secondary, a lot of that is lost just because of the lack of
Demands of,
time and the
yeah.
lack of time in the curriculum. Not only that, I think also it depends on the actual school itself, the location of the school, and the objectives of the actual school team, because some school teams are very much more interested in actually creating that space, because I think it's not impossible.
Yeah.
But it is challenging for them. I understand that. And resources are another issue, time, space, resources, I would say.
And
I would
so,
say it depends on the school as
Mm,
well. And
mm,
it's like a growing movement to go more to the nature at schools. I've always realized that it's like little time for unstructured play and risk taking and these kind of experiences that are really fundamental for children. So forest school is not really separated from education, that we may talk about that as well. So it could be integrated into education. So the interesting thing of forest school where we've been doing our training is that it's not the same in Spain, as you know, is that is the forest school leader that may come to school and open the school to nature for some time during the week or every 2 weeks, or that would be the ideal thing. But generally speaking, is not much time spending children outdoors at school, maybe because of fears or cultural issues. It may be a mixture of all that, because as you said, it's not the weather, because we have the examples that tricky weather and you may be outdoors.
well, there's no such thing as bad weather. It's just bad clothes, right? Incorrect
There's no
clothes.
such thing as bad weather. So it's, yeah,
I often think if it's a cultural thing because
it is.
Spanish
In
people are very
Spain,
clean, right?
mm-hmm.
They don't like mud, and my children always look feral in comparison to some of the
the thing
kingdom
about
around.
mud is really, it's like, oh, dirty, and it's raining. It's like, it's not acid, it's just water.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. No,
it's still
so yeah,
that,
I
but it's
do to
still that.
myself, I do have a little giggle about that and wonder if it is. So, so if I know you have different, you have different groups for different ages, but say, what are some typical things that a child would learn in one, if they were to do an after school course with you and join one of the after school groups?
I would say before, one thing is to say that the separation between forest school and what we do in Enboscados and something like traditional outdoor education. It's not that I mean, I'm not to say that we're not trying to teach directly things when we go to our sessions. We're trying to
Right. Yeah.
teach or give the children the skills that they need to learn themselves. So it's more how they learn rather
Yes.
than what
What
we're
they
actually
learn
doing
in
in a
yeah.
session, in the sense that, I mean, they may not say that we don't do maybe a one-off workshop that would teach you a specific skill or something, but if we're talking about a regular activity that we would run during the school year, where
Mhm.
children are coming all through the seasons and they're coming more or less with the same group of children to the same location, obviously with both of us, then during that time, they would have the opportunity and be given the tools and the skills that they need to almost self-teach themselves certain things with our support, obviously, and with in terms of any risk, with our guidance there with them. No? So what would they learn? They would learn a lot of, it's trying to focus on the main things, but skills for being able to look after themselves outdoors. First of all, the qualities for them to actually how to recognize when they need certain things, like how to, when they're cold, when they're hungry, how to assess that without being told that they need to do that. They would be given the space to be able to play and choose what they want to do when they're outdoors. So
So
we give them
autonomy.
different materials to experiment with, to have a go, to observe, to watch other children, to watch their own and investigate their own surroundings. It's a natural science playground, really, outdoors, for experimentation and for observation. So maybe Marta, you want to continue with some other.
Yeah, I would say that we always plan our sessions, taking into account many facts like the weather and the season of the year. And there are always so many opportunities for learning, but it's not us, as Naomi said, that said you have to learn this, because how can we prevent children from learning? We are learning all the time because we want to explore. Children want to explore all the time, and given the freedom to explore and to play freely and with the support and feeling confident because we are there. We are not going to, of course, it's very important to have limits. They are quite simple, although you have to keep them in mind. We always say, like, take care of nature, take care of yourselves, and take care of others, which is a lot if you really do all that. But yeah, they feel naturally inclined to explore all the world around them. So it may be mini beasts or the observation, sense of wonder, because they feel how the
Exactly.
environment changes during the seasons. And as Naomi also said, like giving the tools to explore, like real tools, real experiences. So it's all super connected. They feel confident because you are making them feel capable and to develop their skills.
You touched there on also the social skills. A group of children also are because they're interacting all the time.
Mm.
They're developing not only different ways of communicating with each other, with
And
us,
solving problems as well.
yeah, and leadership within the group. That's changing all the time. It's not necessarily the same leader that in a classroom space would shine and be the confident one. Outdoors is often the one that you don't see in the classroom that shines in the same way. There are different skills used outside the four walls of a traditional classroom. Or the typical child that would be considered maybe a fidget in class. Yeah, outdoors would be somebody who, when it comes to practical skills, could excel in that
They may
area.
change a lot outdoors.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we learn from each other because we are learning all the time from them. They make a lot of questions and it's fascinating for us as well.
And I love how you give a debrief at the end of, after a session as well for the parents to understand, what you did and during the session. You're really supporting us as parents to grow good humans, really, to develop, for our children to develop into good humans. And I think some of the things you mentioned there, encouraging that sense of wonder within children, but also marry it with a responsibility. As humans, we have a responsibility to nature, and we're guardians of this place. And so to be able to Yeah, to help these children, our children, harness that, I think is just wonderful. And I think, I was expecting you to go into practical things that you did there, but you're so right. It's like the fundamentals of what you do at Enboscados is just phenomenal. And I sometimes think that, my children will learn from you in a different way than they learned from me. And so, I grew up on a farm. My husband grew up spending an awful lot of time in rural Cantabria. And so we have a natural passion for being outdoors, but of course we live busy, busy lives. And so for them to learn in their own way with their friends and with both of you as the guardians of those sessions, we then can unite at the weekends and come together as a family as a weekend and enjoy it without, feeling the pressure that we need to teach our children. You can just kind of, they meet us at where they're at and we meet them where they're at and we kind of just evolve then as a family, if that makes sense. And I think, one thing that we didn't think about covering today, but is, it's just such an important alternative to screens.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't know if I told both of you this, but we were out for lunch. It was around the new year and we were having lunch in Vega de Paz, so up in the mountains. And we were two families, two Emboscados families actually. And all the other tables were full, right? And all the other kids on all the other tables, maybe 10, 12, I don't know, 15 other tables were on a device of some sort. And there was my eldest, who was 8 then, and he had a piece of wood and his penknife, and he was just carving away to his heart's content, creating something. But ye guys had taught him how to use penknives
Yeah.
safely.
Yeah.
And, it's just, like my heart just bursts with pride
Mm.
because I grew up, yes, we watched TV in the 80s and 90s, but, on a farm, I spent so much time outside. And then my dad is 86 and the penknife is a way that my son can connect with his grandfather without words, that it's an intergenerational connection that you guys have facilitated in where both generations would find it a little bit difficult to connect to each other without that bridge, that mechanism.
Yeah. Well, I think it's one of our definitely one of our aims really as a project with Enboscados. Obviously, the participants in our activities, mostly children or young people or families or adults as well. But in a typical session with a child, obviously you'd think that the main person is the child, but it's not. It's more than that. It's the whole family. And it's the relationship with us as the families as well. And I think you touched on about how we share, what we've done in a session, or we try to send some photographs to the parents. And I think it's not just for the child then to look at the photos and then be able to tell their parents a bit more about, or maybe it opens the discussion about what actually what went on during a session, because some children don't naturally talk about things that they've done, others do, but you may find that. And I think it's more than that. It's for the families as well to have that sort of understanding of what we do. And yeah, it's great
And
that
that
we
we can
can.
pick it up,
Yeah, it can be
that we
Yeah.
can,
transforming for all of them. Yes, I
that
agree with
like
that.
I love that, that I can be conscious of what they did. And so I've got two children. One goes to the junior session that you have, and we'll talk again in a minute about the different offerings that you have. And then my eldest goes to the mid range. I don't know. Yeah, you've got kind of three for children at the moment. And but if I know what they've done in the group session with both of you with Emboscados, then I'm conscious of it and I can kind of weave it into our weekends or our afternoons. And, I don't know if you're making daisy chains, for example, then we can continue with that. Or if it was a flower theme, maybe we would do some planting, or, you're more have it in your consciousness. So, or if it's, if you were looking at footprints. And if we go for a walk, then it's, because they really, I know that families, because we do, struggle sometimes to like, I always find it's much easier. We go for a hike with our school community once a month. And, even my youngest can walk 8 kilometers or more in a community, everyone going the same way. But goodness gracious me, you try to get them out of the house on a Saturday or Sunday morning with all the things that you need to go with as a family. And there's just whinging and moaning and blah, 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 blah. And so even with that, when you go to do stuff on your own, if you can reference what happened in Enboscados, it forms that connection. And then they're interested,
Hopefully,
they're enthusiastic.
hopefully it's a form of inspiration that we can share some of those things that we do that then the families can also do as well. There's nothing for us, it's not exclusive to us, and
No,
it's
but it is.
nice that
Yeah.
can be opened.
And it's
Yeah.
important for us to create community, to communicate with families what we are doing, because children have a natural connection still with nature. But it's not your case. You haven't lost it. But there are parents with other groups of children that maybe their parents have lost the connection, and they realize how important it is for their children, and they can share moments. Really satisfying for us to know that when they tell us, he's been teaching me how to do this, and we've been sharing this, and it's really inspiring for us as well.
Like the whistle with the grass, Finn was doing that recently. And, that's just something that, there's so many things that have been lost from my childhood to now, from moving different countries and just whatever else. I'm sure you said, but it's like, these are things that every kid knew how to do when I was growing up on a farm. And then he's showing me how to do it as if it's something that he's just learned. It's really cute.
Yeah, adults
Even though I'm
need
a farmer's daughter, I can't whistle.
Adults need nature, probably even more than children. I mean,
More
the
than
rhythm of our lives.
Yeah.
All of the things we have on our minds all the time, whether it's work, family issues, whatever. We've forgotten how to slow down and how to observe the small things and how to really appreciate the changes of the seasons, for example. We're often shut away in offices or in our cars, and I think it's just making space for that, isn't it? And reconnecting and reigniting that sense of curiosity and wonder that we had, and realizing that we can play like children even though we're adults.
Yes, as adults, we can recover that in case we've lost it. Yes, and our children can help to do so.
Yeah, definitely. And allowing yourself time to disconnect from other stuff, to be present in nature with your family is just one of the greatest gifts that you can give. So tell me a little bit then about how you work with people. So I know you work with families in a variety of different ways, and then you work with schools, and then you also work with corporates as well for more team building, right?
And different ages, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. We have quite a wide variety of offerings, but we try mainly sort of 3 groups, as you say. We try to work with children from age 3 plus. We have 3 groups really for sort of infant, primary, and secondary, let's say, after school. And then what we're really trying to do is bring it more into the school day. So schools that are able to sign up for our sort of first school within the school period of the school day, not as an extracurricular activity.
Yeah, it's woven into the curriculum, right?
Yeah, that's right. It's something that follows certainly in the UK, something that's quite normalized now there, where a group of children, usually within sort of primary or late infant stages, would spend 2 or 3 hours of a morning in a forest school program. We're pushing more for that. It would be great if we could get more schools involved.
You've grown a lot in the last even 12 months in that area. So
yeah, it's a big thing for us that forest school could be for everybody, and that's of all ages. And I think it shouldn't be something that is only accessible to those who can, in terms of those who can pay or those who can in time wise. It should be something, I think, that should be available to as many people as possible. So we try there. And then obviously where we can, we offer workshops for families.
Yeah.
For any groups of friends or anyone who's interested in running a workshop with a group that they have. And recently, with businesses who are interested in doing some form of team building, again, taking them out of the traditional office environment or working environment and doing something with their team that would help them to sort of think differently, let's say, come outside the box of what they would normally do.
Yeah.
And again, it brings out different skills and qualities in those people on a professional level too.
So what kind of thing would you do in a family or a team building workshop? Because I'm sure that people are, if a family were thinking about doing something to, as a connection day, they might think of, booking a guide to go for a hike, or they might think of booking some surf lessons. I'm thinking just in Cantabria, right? Or else going on a bike ride. But what type of things would you do? What type of things could they expect in one of your family or team building sessions?
Marta, do you
Well,
want to
they
take
are
me on?
different. I mean, we offer many different possibilities, but
Mm.
the main one probably is for families. We organize like bushcraft workshops. It would be like a basic bushcraft abilities, and also like seasonal celebrations connected to solstice, summer solstice, winter solstice, where we can learn about edible plants and flowers. And this may be also connected with bushcraft abilities with
Mm.
regard to how to make a fire,
Mm.
how to cook outdoors. So we learn how to cook with plants we have around us, and how to make knots and to make shelters. And we always realize how funny for all of them is, because they tell us afterwards, like we've lived like a time of connection.
Mm.
And you see how adults with children alike are like really focused doing things, because we are not used anymore, sadly, to work with our hands. And it's so important for us, for our mental health,
Mm.
not only for children development.
Mm.
So basically, it's about connection outdoors through some proposed issues, maybe bushcraft, maybe seasonal celebrations, but also like how to make like nature journal, or it may be related to art, nature and art, and we
Mm.
may explore different possibilities. But there may be other specific issues that are connected with nature as well. If you want to add other ones, because we've organized many different workshops for
Yeah,
families.
yeah, yeah. No, but
We try to personalize, but as Marta says,
Yes.
we have a kind of a menu, let's say, of
yeah,
possible
yeah.
activities that if some families know what they want, what they'd like. And others are like, well, what can you offer? What would you suggest? And in which case we usually then mixture of different possibilities, and then depending on the time of year, depending on the weather conditions, the location, we'll then sort of with an idea and a proposal for them.
Yeah. Um, and of course, something that we haven't forgotten to mention is that it's bilingual.
Yes.
Mm.
Yes.
And for me, when we were moving here, um, that brought me as a parent, brought me such a sense of confidence, because, my son had some Spanish by the time he joined you. But for me, my Spanish was still pretty poor then. So to be able to communicate with you, but also know that, should anything happen and he needed to, that he could speak in English. And I think, and also then, as time went by, I realized that he had little opportunity to play in English. His primary language is English and always will be, because he was born in Australia. He speaks Spanish fluently. He had little opportunity. And so I was trying to encourage opportunities for him to play in English as well. And I think, so that it's just wonderful that it is, school on its own is a fantastic offering. But the fact that it's bilingual, that both of you speak English and Spanish, is just, the cream on top, really.
I think it's really important that for children and for parents that it's a safe space, where as a parent I can totally understand that leaving your child, especially a young child, with two strangers for an afternoon is a big thing, especially if you've just moved to a region. So having that confidence to be able to communicate with us, both of us speak English fluently and Spanish obviously, but having that confidence that you understand where your child is going, what they're going to be doing, and that you can communicate with the person who's going to be with them, I think makes a huge difference. And on the one side is that, but also with English, we're very conscious that English as a subject at school, is something to be learned, which is fine. It has its space in the curriculum, but English is a language which is based on communication. Through our activities, there are groups where we have some groups where we use very little English, because
Mm.
it's just not a natural thing within the group of children. For example, in a small village in Spain, where they're just they don't use it naturally, but we try to introduce a few words here and there, and they do use them. But in groups where you've got international families involved, it's a real pleasure to be able to have that mix of languages within the group. And in English, obviously, is that then safe space for that child also to be able to be themselves. And that's really important. And as you say, to express if they need anything, if they feel scared, or they have a problem, or they just want to tell you something, and they can be equally excited about it. And that's
And there is
something
also
we can offer.
the other side, that Spanish parents, for instance, or even kids that maybe may feel worried about, but is English compulsory or something? No, it's never a pressure, but it's rather an opportunity for them. I mean, it's always they are learning English for those Spanish kids in a natural way. And sometimes we observe that they are playing together with an English-speaking kid, for instance, and maybe one is speaking Spanish, the other one is speaking English. They don't even realize.
No.
Or maybe we are saying something in English, or our materials, many of our nature materials are in English because there's much more material in English still. And it's another way of learning English naturally, but it's never under pressure. So that's also important for both parts, I think.
Yeah, yeah. And then something that you mentioned, Martha, and it's something that I love to weave into these conversations, because this podcast is all about celebrating life in Cantabria and understanding how Cantabria is different to rest of other parts of Spain, perhaps. But it is that Celtic calendar, right?
Yeah, super interesting. Yes.
And for you and me, Naomi, coming from Ireland and the UK, that sense of connection to Celtic land is just, it's just wonderful to be able to have that in our chosen home here in Cantabria. And yes, to be able to celebrate the festivals on the Celtic calendar. And also then, as for me as a parent, I talk to my children about the solstices and Imbolc and the different festivals. But then for them to hear someone else talk about it as well, it's not just, oh, mom, it's made normal then as well. And I think that's really, really lovely. And it's so important, isn't it, that how can you have a consciousness or noticing or connection with nature without understanding the cycle of the year? Again, back to my dad, he's 86 and has been a farmer all his life. And I think what a gift that he's had, that he was able to notice, is such a bird early or late this year? Is, such a tree early or late this year? And to be able to open our children up to that.
Yeah.
In a safe way, while pushing their boundaries to help them learn more than, to push their own, jumping off trees, or if it's the penknife or touching a poo, whatever it is, or maybe you get a tick on you and how to deal with its safety, or a nettle sting, that we remove our children from hygiene spaces and put them in that is just, I, as a parent and as a friend of you both, am so grateful to your courage and your tenacity for creating and for growing Enboscados, because it really is a gift for all parents in Cantabria.
Thank you.
I think you touched on there, the seasonality is a huge thing. And I think, as you said, even children, even comes down to food, why can't we eat strawberries in the middle of January, for example? We can if we go to a supermarket, but is it right to be doing that? And I think in the sense that, it takes the conversation with the children also to what's available at this time of year when we go out foraging for something that we can make into a wild tea or something like that. There are so many things we could go into, with the seasonality in Cantabria. As a region, just is incredible in that sense that it offers not only the landscape variety but also the seasonality. There are very clear seasons, and it's a region that you can actually feel that transition during the year, even though we may get some unusually hot days in February or a cold day in the middle of August. But it is.
And celebrate it.
Cantabria is like the perfect land for that. And for me, it was like a big discovery some years ago. Like Wheel of the Year, fruits, and it's very nice to celebrate that with children and with families. And Forest School really has this part of holistic development, like intellectual, social, spiritual. It's like connecting to something else. It's something personal. Every person knows what it is, and the seasonal changes you can notice in Cantabria is really connected to that spirit of celebration. Sometimes it's like going more inwards in winter solstice, celebrating the inner light. Now we are about to celebrate like the expansion, the solar light, and so it makes sense. And when you celebrate that with people, you really feel that they connect with that naturally. It's like we have in us that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's really beautiful. Thank you both very much for joining me
Pleasure.
today. And yeah, for anyone listening, I recommend you get in contact with Enboscados, especially, moving country is such a whirlwind. And to spend time with you on arrival is the perfect way of grounding and just connecting to Cantabria. So yeah, wonderful. Thank you both very much.
Thank you, Grace.
Very happy to be here. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thanks for listening to the Move to Cantabria podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, press subscribe and check out our website movetocantabria.com. Until next time, I'm Grace, and this is the Move to Cantabria podcast, celebrating life in this beautiful corner of northern Spain.